Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. Her name is Zahra Karsan. Mrs. Zahra, how are you doing, ma?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Timmy. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Mrs. Zahra. Firstly, you are a mindset coach. You are also an author and the founder and CEO of Jet Zen End. Can you please, Mrs. Zahra, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mrs. Zahra?
Well, sure. Well, where do I begin? Let's see. I was trained first as a management consultant, but always fascinated with human behavior. So I studied psychology, positive psychology, everything related to human behavior and the human journey. My first career was in the corporate world as a management consultant. So I became really good at mastering things and service delivery excellence. And so learning how to run a company, build things, fix things. So I fixed broken companies, and I guess now I fix people. So it came to be an interesting blend of skills that I've been able to use over the years. And of course, you use a lot of psychology in consulting as well. So in my second career, I decided to build a meditation app back, in 2015, 2016, when they were first coming out. Calm and Headspace came out, and we had Get Zen. That's where the company name comes from. But what I realized is people didn't understand why it was so helpful and how many layers of tools were built in. So I decided to build a coaching practice, and I was seeing such amazing transformations in my clients that I said, how can I help people help themselves? And how can I get the scientific evidence to be able to describe the transformations I'm seeing in people? So I started then all of my post-grad studies in neuroscience because I wanted to understand the brain and the nervous system. Like, how does the person, the body, deal with life events, deal with negative emotions, deal with big positive or negative emotions? How do we process feelings and thoughts? And how do I describe what's happening in the body in terms of what's holding us back in life? And so all of these different fields of study came into play, and I realized what I was seeing was evidence in all of the science that explained what was happening in my clients. And I said, oh my gosh, this is a book. I need to teach people how to do this for themselves. So it's not just they're not relying on me as a one-on-one coach, but I can actually reach more people and give them the tools they need because I think these are core life skills. And most people are, fumbling through life trying to understand how to do it right, how to be a good person, how to be happy, healthy, successful in their life. And even when you think you've achieved all of your life goals, get the degree, get the job, get the career, get the kids, get the house, get the car, and they're not healthy or they're not happy or they're not feeling like they're doing life well. Well, how do you solve all of those puzzles? And so what came out was the book 6 Weeks to Happy and all of these other tools and programs that we're now developing, including a corporate wellness program. So we can take this now into companies and reach people in that way as well. So it's very exciting.
Indeed, I have to be honest with you. Indeed, you are fixing things. At least you are seeing the situation and you're trying to fix it. You've been doing it from the beginning and you've done it in a book. And that's why I'll have to dive to the book, Mrs. Zahra. Can you please discuss more on the book, 6 Weeks to be Happy? 6 Weeks to Happy. And do you have more
Yes,
books you are planning to write in the coming future, Mrs. Zahra?
I do. I have several that are in the works already. The first one is really a 6 week plan, which encapsulates the Rewire mindset system. Rewire is an acronym, so 6 letters, 6 weeks. And the reason I developed a 6 week program is because we can now see through brain scans, through fMRI studies and scans, that the brain actually shows lasting signs of change at the 35 to 42 day mark, which is 42 days is 6 weeks. And so I thought, why don't we give people a set of really simple tools that they can layer? So give them the education and give them the tools to learn how to tune into themselves, how to figure out who they are, because what makes you happy and what makes your brother, sister, or spouse or colleague happy is going to be completely different than what makes me happy and what makes each of the people in my life happy. So you need to really tune in and understand who you are what's important to you. Those are your values. What are your needs in each of the different areas, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, social, financial? What is it that makes you happy in terms of the life that you want to live that really makes you feel excited and like you're thriving in life? Because so many of us are just waking up in a grind. We're waking up exhausted, then we go through our day fairly uninspired, and we get up and we have to start the whole thing over again. It's a little like that movie Groundhog Day. And so, how do you shift the conversation and shift a person? And so we build on it. So in week one, we first talk about calming the mind, and we go straight into what are the five major limiting beliefs that plague all human beings. We don't have all five necessarily, but each of us has two or three major ones that prevent us from living a really full life because we, the animal self, we're actually wired for survival. We're not programmed for happiness or success. And so it's that unconscious wiring. So if we are 5% conscious mind, 95% subconscious mind, how do we tune into that 95%? That's where all the change happens. You can't, it's almost like your conscious mind, that 5% is your goal setter. And the one that actually goes out and gets the goals and achieves them is your unconscious mind, that 95% of you. So if your goal setter wants happiness or success, and your goal getter is wired for survival, they're not running the same race. They're not even on the same team. So, how do you reintegrate them and get them on the same team? And so, the book 6 Weeks to Happy gives you a 6 week plan where you learn, you see all of the science, you see all of the evidence, you get the education on how the brain works, how the nervous system works, how the mind conjures up all of these things. It goes into the conscious, subconscious, and even pulls out all of your personality types. I developed a personality quiz called the Life Block Quiz. So you can actually tap into what are the specific limiting beliefs that are stopping you from having health, wealth, happiness, and success in your life. So we tried to make it as easy as possible, and all it takes is 6 weeks. And then you put in place a long-term plan to make sure that you're keeping those tools up to date.
Yes, and definitely, I also completely agree with you, Mrs. Zahra. The time that we are currently now, we're in a time of full anxiety. A lot of people are being burned out. A lot of people are unhappy in our time currently today, probably due to the belief we have currently, which is really affecting. So, a book like this
Mhm.
definitely can teach someone in a way, gradually steps in 6 weeks, in how someone can definitely fix a lot of things when it comes to having this sense of relief and happiness. We do know
Correct.
that this time that we are now, everything is speeding up, everybody are busy, but we have to just have some time to have some calm and also have some time to also make ourselves happy because, as she said
Yeah.
earlier, the what will make us happy will not make the other people happy. So thank you so much for those insights, Mrs. Zahra. I would like to dive to the point of negative behavior. We do know that there are a lot of type of negative behavior, but what, in your own experience, what do you think is exactly a negative behavior pattern, and how do you think we can recognize them in ourselves, Mrs. Zahra?
Yeah, a very good question. I mean, it's just what we talked about in terms of the five major categories of limiting beliefs, right? So, and the unconscious wiring. So if you think of the unconscious wiring as a computer program that just runs in the background, you don't think about how you breathe, you don't think about how you walk, you don't even think about how you respond in an emotional situation. So let's say you get into a fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse. What happens in that moment is we get triggered, and then there's a computer program that just executes on automatic pilot. So it's like, how computer programs are written is all logic based. So it's if condition A happens, then execute program B. And we're wired in the same way. So, for example, if your unconscious underlying belief is, I'm alone in this world, I'm not supported, there's no one here to look after me, it doesn't always sound like that. How it plays out in terms of a negative behavior pattern, though, let's say you're in a relationship and you have an argument with your spouse, and all of a sudden you catch yourself saying, that's okay. I don't need anyone. I can do this myself. And so these are shutting down behaviors. That's how you can recognize a negative behavior pattern. If you stop and ask yourself a question, is this towards behavior for togetherness, or is it an away from behavior in terms of separation? So if you're pushing a person away or pushing yourself away, it's probably a negative behavior pattern.
Wow, that's very beautiful. I think that's actually the first step someone have to look at. Am I pushing myself away, or am I pushing people away from me? Like, how do I behave in my surrounding? I think those can
Mhm.
definitely flash out those areas that definitely can bring those negative behavior, and someone can know how to mend such situation. I would also like to know, how do you also feel like someone can identify this negative behavior very early? How do you think someone can, identify the root cause that is reoccurring within someone very early, Mrs. Zahra?
Yeah, well, that's why we developed the life block quiz because it takes into account all of these different areas of life. So whether it's how you respond, like what is your relationship with money? What is your relationship with family? What is your early childhood experience and how did those events happen for you? Because we could have been sharing the same moment, but how it occurred for me and how I processed it could be completely different for you. And what's important is how you, the person, the unconscious mind of you, decided to process that particular life event. And so we need to look at all of these things. And so the life block quiz was called out to figure out, to help you figure out your full personality profile as a series of animal archetypes. So what ends up happening is early on in life, usually before the age of 7, you have a life event happens where you are called to answer the question, why? Why is this happening? This isn't right. So what's happening here? And as a human being, what we do is we make up a story to explain what's happening in front of us. Now, that story can't possibly be 100% accurate if we can all have a different experience of that moment. So what became your story? And so when you take the life block quiz, it pulls out all of these different traits. It pulls out what happened to you early on in childhood, not the specific events, but how you process them, because the questions are designed to help you understand which of the 5 limiting beliefs operate in you. So I'll go over the five. They are, and they appeal to all human beings. If you're alive in this earth and you're a human being, you're dealing with some of these for sure. So the first one is that I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. It's also called imposter syndrome nowadays. The next is I'm not lovable or I'm not worthy of love or I'm not deserving of love. The third is I'm alone. We talked about that one already. Um, Another one is I'm not capable of wealth and success. So something early on in life shaped your relationship with money and abundance and the ability to accumulate wealth. And then the last one is I'm not capable, I'm not safe. So something probably happened early on in childhood, maybe even in the womb or as a baby, where you were felt, and it could be something so simple like you were just crying too much. Mother or father got really frustrated. They decided, "Oh, I just need 15 minutes for my own sanity," left the baby crying. And in that moment, the baby felt like there was no one there to look after them and therefore didn't feel safe. So one of two things could have developed. Actually, more than any one of these five could have developed. You could have either decided for yourself in that moment, I'm alone, there's no one here to look after me. You could have decided, I'm not safe. What if something dangerous is happening? I'm crying. I can't understand. I'm frustrated. You could have decided, nobody loves me. I'm not deserving of love in that moment. So any one of those things could have played out. And then what happens is we have a survival-based set of behavior patterns that play out as well. So the next time we feel that same feeling, either I'm not safe or I'm not loved or I'm alone in this world, a whole program runs. And so, like in the earlier example, if you are pushing away from a survival-based behavior is meant to shut you down and keep you safe, keep you alive, in other words. So let's take that same example. So that same baby, 15 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, is now in an office scenario and something stressful happens at work. Well, if you feel like you're alone in the world, how is that impacting your ability to rely on your business partners or your team? Or are you going to say, I got it. I have to do it myself. If I want something done right, I have to do it myself, is usually what it sounds like, or some version of that. And so how it plays out, great. It can develop into a strength. It can make you incredibly strong and resourceful and resilient. And that's how these patterns normally develop. But with some awareness in the education, you can actually figure out what's a healthy version of that pattern versus an unhealthy. And notice what are your triggers? What are the behaviors that play out when you're triggered? And so, yeah, the quiz can be really, really helpful and a fun way to get to know yourself as well.
Thank you so much for the insight, Mrs. Zahra. That means definitely all these situations, sometimes it could come from childhood, it could come from some background, as you said earlier, and definitely having some kind of steps that are necessary to get it, to know how to also develop and also fix it is definitely a very, very wide idea. Thank you so much for those insights. And also, I would also like to know if there are also probably any practical, step, Mrs. Zahra, that some people can take to also interrupt or probably replace this negative pattern if it is possible to replace Mrs. Zara.
Yeah, I mean, we cover it. That's why, it's part of the reason why I wrote the book 6 Weeks to Happy, because the whole plan takes you through it step by step, layer by layer. And with three, you're learning three easy tools per week to reprogram the subconscious, reprogram your brain and nervous system away from stress and back to balance. But I would say probably there's four particular steps that anyone needs to take outside of the book. So, number one is you need to have an awareness of what the pattern is. You need to have an awareness of what your triggers are and how you respond. So, when something emotional happens in your relationship, how do you respond? If something stressful happens at work, how do you respond? If something stressful happens with a family member, how do you respond? Next, I think you want to take you need to get real with yourself. Like you really need to step back and review all of your past behaviors with that family member, with different work situations, and in all of your relationships, not just the one you're in now. And if you start to see the pattern, the beautiful thing about awareness is once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now you'll always be aware of it. And if you're aware of it, then you can make a change. It's hard to make a change when you don't know what you don't know because you can't see it yet. Once you can see the road ahead, then you can choose whether or not you want to go down or turn right or left and make a different choice. Again, if you're deciding togetherness or separation, is it an away from or is it a towards motivation? So if what you really want in your heart of hearts is to be in a loving, healthy relationship, it's going to require you to be a little real with yourself. It's going to require you to make mistakes. It's going to require you to be forgiving and vulnerable and ask that of your partner as well. And it's a great idea to even share with your partner what your patterns are and elicit those from them as well. So, take the quiz, both of you, or, as a family, so you can better understand how to support each other and say, oh, okay, this person's just upset. It's not actually about me. So the fight then isn't internalized. It's not as upsetting because you know that they're just doing the best they can and this is their pattern playing out. Um, and then the last is, there are tools to rewire and rewrite that unconscious programming. And that's what we cover in the book in the Rewire Mindset System, which is why it's called that, because you really are rewiring old programming and putting in place something that can have you be happier, healthier, more productive, and more successful in life and in work.
That is very beautiful. Thank you so much for the insight. That shows how important those tools and those necessary steps are needed to
Mm.
also fix this negative pattern that could definitely help someone in the long term because it is definitely not easy in the time that we are currently. And lastly, Mrs. Zahra, I would also like to, ask, do you, if there is any time that is able, how long do you think it also typically take to break free from this deeply ingrained pattern, those patterns? Do you think there's a time frame it takes before someone can break free finally from those patterns, Mrs. Zahra?
Yeah, I think, it's funny because everyone has heard it takes 21 days to break a habit. But it's because people like things to be easy. 21 days is a good, it's about 3 weeks, is a good rule of thumb to start on a new behavior pattern. But again, this whole concept of 6 weeks and why I developed a 6 week plan and called the book 6 Weeks to Happy is because it does take 6 weeks to see new neural pathways in the brain. So, for example, if you have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors all bundled together in one way of being, and you want to go the other way, and you want to reprogram. So instead of saying, I'm alone, nobody loves me, I'm going to push away, I'm going to look after myself, well, think about how that plays out in your relationships. Can you ever have a loving, healthy relationship if you're constantly pushing away from the person and saying you don't need them? We all want to be needed. We all want to actually rely on each other and be there for each other. We're wired for that. And then how does it play out in business? How does it play out when you're looking after your family? If you're running stories, I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone, you're going to end up doing everything. You're going to, you know, make the money, you're going to come home, you're going to push away from your partner, you're going to look after your kids, you're going to clean the house. It's exhausting if it's just you doing everything by yourself. If you can find a way to heal that and rely on the people in your life and understand your patterns, that's great. And what happens is with intentional action, because now you have this awareness and now you can choose a different set of behaviors that are towards instead of away from. So now, with 6 weeks of repeated thoughts, feelings, and behaviors going in a new direction, what you're creating is a new neural pathway to say, instead of I'm alone, I'm going away from, now I'm coming towards you. How can we work together? What do you need from me, and what do I need from you? And so you can learn those new thoughts, new behavior patterns, and it just takes, being intentional and creating that self-awareness over a period of 6 weeks.
Thank you so much for the insight. That shows that probably if someone have that mindset and build that pattern within 6 weeks, definitely it could definitely be fixed and also probably be eradicated within those time frame. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
that
of
insight, Mrs. Zahra. Lastly,
course.
Mrs. Zahra, there is a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From the forefathers, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is
Mm.
anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mrs. Zahra, what do you think that thing will be, ma'am?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think there needs to be a greater balance between the masculine and feminine energies. I think women were disempowered for centuries and centuries, and the patriarchy has risen up. I think, you're seeing more women in politics, you're seeing more women in the business world, but the balance is still very, very off. Um, and so I think we need to rebalance our masculine and feminine energies and women have incredible gifts in terms of how we process emotions, how we can bring balanced conversations back to the table as well. So I think a time when we get to honor women would be very valuable right now.
Definitely, I completely agree with you. So honoring
Mm.
people and women, and also bringing women into power, and also stuff like that. Also, one of the beautiful things. Also, one of the reasons why my podcast is, my mom is someone that was very, 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 very nice and very, very nice. And when she passed away after 10 years, I decided I have to do this. One of the reasons why I have to, create this podcast to also impacts a lot of people. So that was one of the things that should be happening in our time today. There are a lot of we do know that there are a lot of women that are on the other side, but there are some women that are really great, doing great things, and they could definitely
Mhm.
impact the world in a very positive way. I want to also use
Yeah.
this opportunity to thank you for the time and the opportunity you've given me today on speaking on the necessary negative patterns that could be, that's how someone can recognize it and how someone can also fix it. Thank you so much, Mrs. Zahra.
Thank you so much, Timmy. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
All right, so have a wonderful day, Mrs. Zahra. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.